everyone. Welcome to our inaugural Good News Report, changing the headlines from what, I grew up in television. I started working television news when I was 19 years old. And so I know the kinds of stories that get covered every day. But on the Good News Report, we want to share with you things that inspire us, not divide us. And let me tell you, if you are breathing today, that is good news. Welcome, and I hope that you will share, connect with all of your friends, because this philosophy, when I worked in the newsroom, the philosophy was if it bleeds, it leads, which means that we hear a lot of news that's not good news. But just remember, that is only a part of what is happening in your community and around the world. There are wonderful things that are happening, and that's our goal on the Good News Report, because we believe that if you are breathing, that is good news. I'm Pamela. I've worked many years as a journalist. I'm a podcast host, peace ambassador, and this is a place for thought-provoking conversations about the people around our communities, ideas, and the many actions that help to shape our communities. And what shapes a community any stronger than election season, which is we are in the midst of now. And I just felt like I attended a forum, as I have many forums. And as I was sitting there, I was thinking voters need an opportunity to hear directly from the candidates. It's great that we see the signs that are up around the community, but they need to hear directly from the people who are asking for their trust, their support, and their vote. Well, today we begin that conversation. We're going to be interviewing all of the candidates for Alachua County School Board. And our guest today is Dr. Sarah Rockwell, a candidate and the incumbent for District 3. Dr. Rockwell joins us to share more about who she is, what inspired her to seek public office, and to talk about her experience. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today, Dr. Sarah Rockwell. Welcome to the Good News Report.
Hi, Pamela. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited that you're doing this. As you said, headlines today are all about what makes us angry and not what makes us hopeful. And so I'm excited that you're changing that narrative.
Yeah. Hey, we have to be the change that we want to see. We can't just complain about things. We have to be the change that we want to see. So, this is not a debate. It's not an endorsement. It is an opportunity for the voters to meet you who have not already met you. Many of them have, because you are the incumbent. So they have been seeing you and hearing from you. But from your perspective, in your own words, I just want them to have an opportunity to be better informed before casting their ballots. I will say that you are the candidate for District 3, and your opponent, Pastor Gregory Palem, has also been invited. So just know that you will have an opportunity to hear from Dr. Rockwell's opponent as well. So again, welcome to the Good News Report. Thank you for joining us. And let me just begin with this kind of behind the scenes of your campaign. Who is Sarah Rockwell, and what led you to decide to step out to become a candidate the first time?
Well, first and foremost, I'm a mom, and I'm a mom of two kids who have disabilities. And I also happen to have a PhD in special education. I taught special education, and then I taught pre-service teachers at UF and advised pre-service teachers at Santa Fe College. But what inspired me to run for school board was really my role as a mom. I got involved because and as we were heading into the fall of 2020 after the COVID shutdown, our district really didn't have any reopening plan announced. It was summer and there was no plan. And so I, along with a group of concerned community members and parents, started advocating for a reopening plan. And that really started my involvement with the school board. I had always been involved in volunteering in our schools, supervising interns in our schools, but I hadn't really been involved with the school board until then. And when Dr. Paulson announced that he was going to be retiring and not seeking re-election, I decided to go ahead and run for his seat, and I was successful. And, my motivation in running was being a parent of children with disabilities and knowing just how difficult it is to navigate a school system from the parent perspective, and how hard it can be to advocate both from the parent and teacher perspective for what each of our children needs as an individual. And just knowing that we could make those things better, knowing that we have a huge achievement gap in our district, both between Black and white students and between disabled and non-disabled students. And I knew that we could do more to work on closing those gaps as well. So, loving public education, loving our school system, and wanting it to be better is what really motivated me to run.
Our guest today is Dr. Sarah Rockwell. She is seeking a second term as the district representative in District 3. Thank you for the work that you have done and that you continue to do, as you mentioned, about children with special needs. How have you been able to impact that since serving on the school board?
So one of the things I'm actually proudest of is in this past school year, the 25-26 school year, we were able to implement a district-wide multi-tiered system of supports. You might have heard of MTSS. It's mentioned. Basically, what MTSS means is how we monitor students to see if the supports that are basic in every classroom are meeting their needs, or if they need additional supports for academics, for behavior, for attendance, for mental health, any of those things, and how we provide those supports, monitor whether they're effective, and determine if more supports are needed. So it used to be that students at different schools in our district were identified for additional help at different points in their struggle. There wasn't a set point district-wide where we would identify a child for needing additional classroom supports, additional small group supports, a referral for a special education evaluation. And so that has changed. And that's something I ran on and advocated strongly for, because I believe that whether your child is at Williams, Lake Forest, Talbot, Archer, they should all be getting the supports they need when they need them. And one child shouldn't have to be waiting longer for those supports just based on what school they're attending.
So let me just ask you, as we continue to see the numbers rise and the number of students who are in our school system with special challenges, autism continues to be on the rise. Do you think school systems are prepared to deal with the number of students that continue to come, increasing the numbers of children with special challenges?
So there's kind of two things happening. I don't think we have more children with disabilities. I think we have better identification processes. So the children with disabilities were always in our classrooms. Now that they're being identified at higher rates, we're getting additional funding from the IDEA grant from the federal government to help meet their needs. Our teachers have a label, a reason why that child might be struggling, instead of just saying, oh my gosh, this kid is a problem. This kid is the class clown. And so that can be really empowering to know that both for a child and their family and their teacher, for everyone involved, knowing a reason why a child is struggling can be really empowering, because for children, for parents, and for teachers, it can feel like, what am I doing wrong? As a teacher, what am I doing wrong that this child isn't learning? For a child, what am I doing wrong that I'm not learning? And so having that diagnosis, that identified disability, can really be empowering for everyone involved. The other piece of the equation is that as school choice expands, a lot of the school choice options don't serve students with disabilities. So the public school becomes the only option for students with disabilities. So as students without disabilities leave to go to private or charter schools that might not serve students with disabilities, the percentage of students who have those disabilities can go up in our public school, not because there's more kids with disabilities in our community, but because the public school is the only option that is required to serve every single child. And so that can be a real challenge for our schools and our teachers.
Dr. Rockwell, having gotten a degree in serving children with special needs, how fair is that? That you have this legislation in place that creates these charter schools, but it's as if you can cherry pick those companies that start charter schools can cherry pick, thus impacting the average grades in their schools. So is that fair? Is that a fair assessment that they're doing a better job, or they've just been able to cherry pick by saying what's in place is children with special needs can't even go to your school?
And I mean, that's not every charter school. We do have some charter schools that will serve students with disabilities. So I don't want to make it out that it's every charter school, but it isn't fair, because the reality is most of our charter schools aren't providing transportation for students. So just by not having bus service, that self-selects for children whose families are able to get them to and from school every day. So that's already, narrowing your pool of students to some degree. We also know that in the public school system, except for very rare instances where a student breaks like a serious law, like bringing a weapon on campus, we can't kick kids out of public school. We have to serve all of the kids. We have to serve the kids with significant disabilities, the kids with significant behavior problems, the kids who are absent many, many days in the year. And that's just not true for charter schools. It's even less true for private schools. And as a district public school, we get the same amount of money per student as the private school voucher student or the charter school student, but we have to provide all of these services like transportation, like services for students with significant disabilities that those schools don't. The private schools, it's even worse because they can charge tuition above what the scholarship amount is. So they can get more per student funding.
Yeah.
So it
Dr.
is like when we say that charter schools are outperforming public schools, it's a little bit unfair because they can pick and choose their students.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like drafting in sports.
For sure.
You can pick the best players to be on your team, then of course your scores are going to be different.
And I mean, that's why professional sports introduced salary caps, right? So that a team can't buy the best players.
But that's not the case in our public schools, right? In our
No.
school system with charter schools and public schools. My heart goes out to all of those who are having to make those decisions, for teachers who are committed to teaching and who love teaching and want their students to do well. But some of them, Dr. Rockwell, as you have probably heard during your time as a school board member, do feel like their hands are tied. What is it that can be done to help teachers better teach their students? I was with a group and one said, we can't even tell children to wake up and learn. We're required to let students sleep during class, yet we're going to be graded on what the test scores look like. How do you address that frustration with teachers?
It is such a hard situation. I remember when I was in school, if the teacher called home to my parent, I was grounded. I was in trouble. And then I remember becoming a teacher and being the one making those calls home and having parents say, no, there's no way my baby did that. And so it was such a strange experience for me to have that culture turn around where the teacher went from this well-respected person in the community, this well-respected professional who was doing the best for our children, who we as a community believed in and supported, to now where teachers are being vilified. The education profession is being deprofessionalized, starting from the federal government down. It kind of creates a culture that devalues our teachers. As a school district, what we're trying to do is put more supports in place for teachers and kids. So last year, we hired reading specialists. We've increased the number for this coming year and added math specialists so that there will be more coaches in the school who can provide extra support, especially to our beginning teachers and second career teachers, which is a lot of our teaching force now. But yeah, I mean, the culture around us, the culture of our country is so different than it was 20 or 40 or 60 years ago.
So how can that be addressed? Because I'm the 11th of 13 children. So my parents attended parent-teachers meetings, and I was in the third grade when schools were desegregated. And I do a one-woman show on Zora Neale Hurston and Fannie Lou Hamer. By the way, those are coming up. I should have that on the screen. September 12th at the Melrose Community Center, I'll be doing Zora Neale Hurston. And then September 13th, Fannie Lou Hamer, civil rights activist, sharecropper from Mississippi, who became a civil rights activist in her efforts to get people registered to vote. When we see these kind of changes from a school board perspective, what can you do as a school board member? Because you already know that what's happening is not working, and the numbers are not going to go up as we continue what we're doing now. What can you as a school board member do to help? Because what we're talking about, when I hear folks say our schools are failing, because I've worked in economic development, what I hear is our workforce is failing. We are failing to produce a workforce to attract companies to any community. When you say schools are failing, people can't read. And I'm curious, what do you feel like as a school board member you can do to help impact that?
So as a school board member, I get to make decisions about how we spend our budget. And our budget is tight. I'm going to be honest, our per student funding has not kept up with inflation year over year. This year, our per student funding went up about 1.6%, while inflation is 3.2%. But I
Dr.
get
Sarah, let me
to
just,
sorry.
may I pause you just a second on the amount of money that we spend on our students compared to the amount of money that we spend on an inmate, from $30,000 to $40,000 a year. Imagine if that was turned around. If we spent just half of that on students and their education and paying teachers, would it not keep us from having to spend Alachua County Jail's budget? I think it's like $35 million a year. And overall, the prison system is a $74 billion a year industry. What is it going to take for the education of humans to rise to a level that we are so ingrained that it's okay to spend money to keep people locked in a cage, but we don't want to spend money to educate them?
Well, we know that every dollar we spend on educating our children saves us $4 in criminal justice dollars later, and social service dollars, both. And that number may have changed. That's old research that I did, but it was for every dollar spent on elementary education, we save $4 in social services and criminal justice later. But I know you're well aware of this because I very fondly remember your platform when you were running for sheriff, that there is a capitalist prison industrial complex, and there are very wealthy people who want to keep making money off of that and spending our money on our children where it would be better invested and where it could prevent a lot of problems and where it could allow our citizens to be more successful and more healthy and happier and more productive. That doesn't make rich people who own prisons richer, unfortunately. It's nobody well, I won't say nobody. There are some people who own testing companies who are perhaps getting richer off of our public schools, but most people in public education are not getting rich.
Yeah.
I'm not. Our teachers certainly aren't. Um, but I'm, what I'm advocating for as a school board member is that we put as much of our budget as we possibly can toward staff and programs that directly impact students. That's why we have reading specialists in place. And in that 1 year, we saw our reading achievement gap narrow by 3 percentage points, which is the largest move we've seen since before COVID. So putting those reading specialists in our schools directly helping our teachers and students is moving the needle on getting our kids to read. We saw the reading achievement of our Black subgroup go up by 6 percentage points last school year. So, that's a huge movement. And I'm really proud of that. And I want to continue doing that kind of work. I think, we have, it's hard when we're not investing in public education and instead, like you said, are investing in the prison industrial complex. That's really hard, but we have to take those limited dollars and be really efficient with our investment in our kids.
Ms. Maureen Henry says, as a retired teacher, I've seen it both ways. All teachers are now honest. I'd like to know more what she means about that, because maybe teachers have been quiet about what has been happening to them in the classrooms, as well as what is happening with students. Dr. Sarah Rockwell is the incumbent for District 3 of the Alachua County School Board and is running for re-election. Her opponent, Gregory Palem, has also been invited, and we hope to be able to hear from him as well. So as you're looking at the biggest challenges, we talked about the students, you have an interim superintendent. What is it that you're going to be looking for if you're elected to serve again, as the search committee comes together to look for yet another superintendent for Alachua County Schools?
So as we live and work in Alachua County, we like to think that we are in a small town. It feels like we're in a small town in a lot of ways. When I go to the grocery store, go out to eat, I run into people I know, say hi. It feels like this tight-knit community where everyone knows each other. But the reality is that we're actually a pretty big city when you look at the entire country, and we are one of the biggest school districts nationally, top 1.5% nationally. We have a total budget, that's our general funds, capital dollars, and grant funds, of over $600 million total. That's big. Even though we sometimes feel like a small town, our school district is big. And so we really need a superintendent who understands how to work in a big school district, who has a track record of success, because a district this size needs systems in place to run smoothly. We need systems to make sure that we're repairing our PE fields on a regular cycle. I've gotten complaints from families about divots and dangerous conditions on PE fields. That's because we don't have a set maintenance cycle for resodding them. That's right, because we're acting like we're small when we're big. Same thing with, people will say, my kid's school has peeling paint, it looks awful. Well, we don't have a set schedule for repainting our schools.
How is that possible? That makes no sense.
How is that possible?
We have maintenance schedules for our vehicles.
Exactly.
Every 3,000 miles, but they don't have anything in place. I was at a school and I saw how bad it looked.
Yeah, same thing with, scrambling to fix air conditionings. Because we don't have a set schedule for replacing them. We don't have a set schedule for inspecting and repairing or replacing roofs. We're constantly waiting for things to break and become emergent instead of having these systems in place to make things work. And so, Dr. Patton, as interim superintendent, has been trying to get some of those systems in place, but we're talking about decades of neglected systems here. One person can't fix everything in a year and a half, but we definitely need a superintendent who understands that we need those systems. and not just the internal systems, but the systems for how we communicate with our community. And, that is one way that I have seen the interim superintendent really struggle, because I think her experience was almost in districts too big. She was used to having a whole communication team behind her, and we aren't that big. We're not a Miami-Dade County or a Collier County. We really need to be strategic about how we talk to our community, because even though we're a big school district, we have this small town feel, and people want to be talked to. People want to know what's happening. And, as a school board member, a lot of times I'm not even involved in the day-to-day operating decisions that people are asking about. For example, when we had the teacher reassignments last week, there were 18 teachers that were reassigned. 10 of them were required reassignments by the state. And the other 8 were at the district's discretion. Those other 8 were pulled back after lots of advocacy from community members, myself, probably other school board members. But there was no communication with the community up front about, this is happening, this is why. And so people were blindsided, they were upset. And a lot of these issues, like, nobody's going to be happy when a teacher is moved right before pre-planning, not the teacher, not the administrator, not the school community, but if they understand why, at least
Could they not have been given more notice?
So the state released VAM scores about a week before the announcement was made, and it takes time to figure out, once they get all the teacher VAM scores, what the average VAM score for that school is, and whether it's above or below the district average, and so whether teachers need to get moved around in our school improvement schools.
So do you think that teachers are being set up for failure? If you look at the students who are able to move out of public school and go to charter schools and carry that number that you gave for the budget, does that include the vouchers that leave?
No, but it does include some of the transfer to charter schools.
Okay.
Not so, yeah, but it does not include the money that leaves. But what does happen, and this happened 2 years ago, the state has one pot of money for the vouchers and the public school students. And they basically guess how many total students will be in the entire state of Florida and set aside a pot of money for the per student funding. And many years, they underestimate that total number of students. And then they do what's called prorating. So they lower the per student funding a little bit based on how many more students they have than what they were expecting. And when it was just charter schools and traditional public schools, it was fair. Everyone's per student funding got lowered the same amount if it was prorated. But now with the vouchers, those students keep their full amount, and the public school and charter school students have an even lower amount because those voucher kids got the full amount. So that's been really hard. I think in terms of being set up to fail, in some ways, yes, I do think that the state is trying to weaken public education. I don't think it's just about the teachers. I think it's about all of us. I'll give an example. They decided that our students did too well this last year statewide. And so they've changed the score requirements for A, B, C. They've raised them. They've raised the score requirements. So they said, oh, too many kids are reading on grade level. We're going to raise the requirements.
What?
Can you imagine? Can you imagine if that happened anywhere else?
Well,
So,
let
yeah,
me just say to our audience, these elections are very important across the board, because these kinds of decisions are being made by people that you vote for, and they impact every aspect of your lives. And when people try to say that your vote does not count, or people are going to do what they want to do anyway, well, that's because the only person that you're talking to is the one that you're saying that to. When someone says that to you, I want you to ask them, how many school board meetings have you attended? How many city council, county commission meetings have you attended? How many appointments have you made with your state representative, your congressperson, your senator? How many of those meetings have taken place where you have actually said, rather than just putting comments on social media, when are you going to get actively involved in what is happening in your community? Because the people that you see who do have an impact, those are just regular people like you. They just decide to take their conversations further than just the person that they were complaining to.
Well,
Dr.
and
Sarah, go ahead.
what you're saying is especially important, because at the forum we were both at on Saturday, they put up a organizational chart for our state, and
Yes.
between the governor and the school board, nobody in education is elected. They're all appointed. It's a appointed board of education, an appointed education commissioner, appointed members of the Department of Education, and those are the people who are deciding things like the score that is required to be considered reading on grade level. Those are the people who are deciding to raise it, all of these appointed people. So if you don't vote for governor, you are letting someone you didn't vote for appoint all of those people between the governor and the school board. If you're concerned about lack of funding for education, that's your state legislatures, your state representatives, and your state senators. So you need to go out and vote for those. And if you're an HD 21, remember that your state representative is decided on August 18th, not in November.
Well, Dr. Sarah Rockwell, thank you very much for taking the time to be on the Good News Report. We are continuing these interviews, and during the course of this election season, we may have more than one interview, more than 2 interviews a day. Today, we will be back a little later with an interview with Hunter Miller. He is a teacher, and he is a candidate for District 1. That's going to be at 5:30 today on the Good News Report. And you see, I have all of these hats behind me, Sarah. That's because we as women wear so many hats. And you as an educator and as a mom, and now as a school board member, as a person who is involved with the community, trying to make sure that our children's needs are at the forefront of conversations and funding. Thank you so much again for being here. Thank you for what you're doing, and best of luck to you in the election.
Thank you so much for having me.
Everyone, thank you for joining us for this edition of the Good News Report. I'm Pamela Marshall with At the Wellness Network, At the Wellness Radio TV, as we continue to do the work that we know is necessary so that you can be informed. Can you hear that? Yes, that's our little theme song. I just love it. There is healing at the well. Yeah. So exercise your right to vote. Make a plan to vote. Gather all the people that you know together to take them to the polls to vote. This is critical. This is your opportunity. This is your voice. And what you're voting for is your future and the future of your children and grandchildren and the future of your community. So make sure that you vote. My name is Pamela Marshall Coons at the Wellness Radio TV and at the Wellness Radio TV podcast for the Good News Report. Remember, there is healing at the well. Make it a great moment. We'll see you next time. Take care.